One of the best pieces of advice I can give to an individual is this right here, for both men and women. Integrate your fantasies, right? You want to have a sexually integrated mentality, right? Regardless of which way you want to date, where in the sexual polarity quadrant you want to do what you do, have integrated fantasies. As far as how you want your life to look, what type of sexual experiences, what type of life you want to have, and be realistic with yourself. You know, your fantasies, they need to have a healthy balance between what's purely in the realm of desire and lust, and also what's realistic to you, what you're willing to put the work in to get, and what's actually going to be sustainable. That's more so my model for integrating your fantasies, right? And there's several reasons why I say this. You know, oftentimes sexual duplicity comes from overstimulation, and overstimulation doesn't only come from experiences. Experiences can cement those fantasies as something that could seem as reality when you don't have the ability to have that in the full package of what you want in a person overall, right? But at the same time, something that can also greatly affect your lifestyle and your happiness is really just that level of integration between your fantasies and your reality, right? You got to understand that. So how you go about doing this is through molding and shifting your preferences. The molding and shifting of preferences is something that gets you to the place where realized chemistry becomes greater than curiosity. When your reality becomes either greater than or something that has a realistic possibility of a trajectory towards what your fantasies are. So for me personally, I went through a process in my own life of tapping into my sexual shadow, but also protecting my preferences on a sexual level, protecting my submissive energy, protecting my feminine energy, right? And getting to my masculine dominant energy, but then learning to be sexually attracted and building, right? Taking that aspect of it, because you can build what's there, right? You can build what's there. I made sure I set out to deal with women who I was, who maybe used to have crushes on and shit like that. I don't believe in crushes and shit like that anymore, but I'm just saying, dealt with women on the level that a lot of people would want to, but I also demystified it, right? Without tapping into my submissive sexual energy like that. So I conquered that. Another aspect of it is developing fetishes and kinks. Developing fetishes and kinks is something that takes away a lot of the superficial aspects of things to an extent, and then it confines different levels of your sexual attraction into spaces that are going to be more easily accessible if that is something that you focus on. So for me, I have a foot fetish, right? That's part of how I did it. I remember at a point in time I had a girlfriend. She had gained a lot of weight. And the foot fetish, I developed it during that time. The seeds of it was probably there, but I didn't really tap into it. I tapped into it during that time, and it was something that helped me sustain my sexual attraction to her until she lost the weight. So now, I kind of leave with the foot fetish a lot of the time. It's cool with me. Plus, it weeds women out too. But it's something exciting. It's something I like to do. And it helps me create sustainable sexual attraction with a woman, right? Another thing is this. I'm a black man. I like black women. When you realize that a lot of the things that you're attracted to in your social programming, things that are fantasies for you, come from what you see on TV and music videos and shit like that, then what you can do is start to detoxify yourself. And then you start to find instances and examples of things that you're going to encounter or desire to be with in a long-term situation, and then developing your sexual attraction and kinks to those things. So one way I did that is I love big lips, right? So the women who I've liked, they had big lips. Real shit. That's sexy to me. I objectify it in a sexual way. I'm like, those big lips with some lip gloss on, I'm gonna look real good on my penis, on my dick. You feel me? That's how I feel. And that's something that creates sexual attraction that's sustainable, because them lips aren't gonna change. Another thing is this, natural hair. So I started thinking about having experiences with, smelling a woman's natural hair, because oftentimes attraction, arousal is related to the five senses. So smelling a black woman's natural hair, putting my fingers into it and gripping it by the roots and how strong it is at the root, and pulling her hair back while I'm thrusting deep into her. See, these are things that are sexy to me. You know what I mean? I like that. I remember when I was younger, because I had to learn this over time, that our preferences, we have a lot more control over them than we think we do. When I was young, like 8, 9 years old, I remember having a conversation with my father. I used to like those skinny little white girls, like Nicole Richie and Paris Hilton and Jennifer Aniston and all them type of girls, because I used to like watching Friends. And he had said something about it to me. I'm like, all right, cool, I feel you. But over time, I started going to black schools, and that's after I moved down south. Started going to black schools. I started seeing black women. I'm like, man, I'm attracted to black women. Another thing was this. I wasn't into thicker women, but I realized, you know what? With time, a woman is typically going to gain weight with time. So in my mind, I started to develop a kink for BBWs. Not that a woman always has to be big, but just seeing that a woman has a capacity to gain weight and that weight sit in the right places, right? To gain weight and that weight sit in the right places. What that does for me is it increases my attraction level. So instead of just looking for a woman who's fit, like Kevin Samuels say, fit, feminine, friendly, instead of just looking for a woman who's gym fit, which means I've seen so many women who looked fit, then as soon as they got married, as soon as they got in a relationship, as soon as they had kids, they lost it. I would look more so at women who had a shape or a frame on them to where if they gained weight, it would still be something that was attractive. So then I would watch porn, with some fat asses, or I'd look at just the way that it jiggles and shit like that when it wobbles when she walks, or just like the size of it, gender flex theory, and just hitting it from the back and seeing that ripple wave back at me like you throwing a rock in a pond. That's a beautiful thing. But then I also went ahead and said, you know what? If I'm with a woman over time, she's going to get some wrinkles on her, right? She may have a little bit of some love handles, you know what I mean? She might have a little tummy on it. That's natural. I like that, because I didn't want to deal with a woman who just looks like she's perfect when it may not be real. So I like something that's real. So yeah, a little bit of fat here and there ain't no problem for me. A little bit of stretch marks, that ain't no problem for me. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of cellulite, that ain't no problem for me. Not at all. Because I'm not caught up on this image of the perfect woman. But that's genuinely my preference. It's not something that I'm lying to myself about. I'm honest. I done been with women before, and I love a woman, and she's like, you getting too big for me? I'm like, yeah, you getting too big for me. I done been with women before who was what a lot of people consider what was perfect to them. But I'm like, nah, you too small for me. Now, my thing is this. I know what I like, but I molded my preferences to fit the archetype that I like. I like black nerd women. So a woman wearing anime apparel or cosplaying or doing different things like that is sexy to me. Right? If you understand the psychology of a fetish or a kink, there's something that gives you a lot of power because you can mold your preferences. And I've used this same ideology around molding preferences with women. I've been with women before to where, and before I get into integrating preferences, I do want to talk about this. You have to understand that for most women and most people in general, but especially for women, they're going to have somewhat of a Gentleman-Gigolo complex to where some women, they haven't been exposed to their true preferences yet, right? So they aren't thinking sexually. There are some women, not all, but there are some women who haven't been exposed to that yet. And because of that, they will convince themselves that they like something that is not really their preference, right? They'll convince themselves of that. And when they convince themselves of that, then they're pushing their lustful sexual desires into their unconscious mind, into their subconscious mind, into their shadow, to where that is something that will trigger sexual attraction. And some of them will get intimidated by it, and then they'll say that they don't like it because they're intimidated by it, because they don't think they're good enough for it. But if they get to a better place, their cup gets fuller, then that's what they're going to like. But what you have to understand is that there's a difference between the symbols of dominance versus the substance of dominance. So I'm 5'9". I don't really have issues with women that are about my height. You get what I'm saying? So I'm an undefeated boxer, right? Undefeated amateur boxer, boxing coach, Dom, right? Coach. I'm masculine and dominant about how I carry myself when it comes to women. So there are women who have been with bigger guys, taller guys, more muscular guys, still preferred me. And not because I was paying their bills, not because I was super emotional with them, but because the substance of my masculinity, the substance of my dominance was something that went over that. And once you overstimulate somebody compared to where they already are, it shifts their preferences. I've had conversations with women who preferred shorter men for sexual reasons, because in their experience, the shorter men tend to have bigger dicks. I'm on the larger side. I ain't humongous. I call it standard issue large, right? But that's been part of the appeal for me, right? And how I moved. And when you understand this, there's different things that you can do to shift those preferences, right? Like gender flex theory. If you're not a real big guy, but you still have the ability to lift a woman up when you're having sex with her, or pick her up and walk around, or she feels safe and protected in your presence, or you're on a larger side with your penis size, you have the ability to dominate her in the bedroom, right? And then you also think about certain things about comfort, a little bit of comfort. Don't go too far into the comfort side, but that's another thing. Like, let's say you're standing up right behind a woman, you can slide right in. Or it's easy for you to kiss each other. Or you can have car sex. It's different things that you have the ability to do when you're not the biggest guy in the world that you can do that a bigger guy wouldn't be able to do. And if you still have the ability to fight, you can do that. I also had a woman before, she seen me knock out guys who, heavyweights in the gym. So when you have the substance, you can bypass the symbol. So let me go back to what I was talking about with the whole thing about when a woman gets older and she ages. So what I started doing was I started watching mature porn, MILF porn. Started thinking of scenarios that would be kinks for me, role play. And when you think about those kinks and the role play and the scenarios, then you can start to attach a certain level of sexual objectification and sexual attraction to traits that don't necessarily indicate somebody being youthful and exuberant and 100% fertile, right? So for me, it's kind of like putting money in the bank. It's like, all right, cool. I know I have the ability to be attracted to a woman who is above the optimal childbearing age. So that makes me feel less weary about the idea of committing and settling down with a woman, right? And oftentimes there's things that we have a guttural, visceral, negative response to that you can develop fetishes and kinks for that will begin to integrate your fantasies into real life. Another thing that I did, and as part of how I became a sex coach, was anything that I like sexually, I can teach it. As a masculine dominant, it's very important, but I think that's very important for a lot of people in general. Anything that I like sexually, I can teach it. So if I like a woman who can deep throat, that's a fetish I might have, a kink or something I liked and I saw it on porn, I learned how to throat train, so I do throat training with women. I've had several women who couldn't deep throat and they got to me and then they could. One thing that was always important to me is being able to deal with a woman who could have vaginal orgasmic penetration. I use this psychological perspective and the psychology of dominance to open a woman up, her using her suggestibility and the feminine submissive state to, one, stimulate those spots, have a conversation with her about it, paint the picture in her mind, make her feel it's possible, do the things that arouse her, let the pussy marinate, then hit it, boom, make sure that she's, positioning herself to where I'm hitting right on those spots. And then, make sure I find the right pace, the right angle, the right intensity, and then keep doing it until she busts. And once you figure that out, then you don't have to worry about having a Madonna-Whore complex saying, okay, well, this woman, she can have orgasm penetration because she a hoe, but this girl right here, she a good girl. That's why she don't do that. She don't come like that. She's just clitoral only. No, man, it's not my experience. You know what I mean? Like, that's not my experience. And it's been various periods of time that it took to get to that place with different women. But it's something that I've seen consistently with every woman that was important to me in my experience of the women that I actually wanted to deal with. Like any woman that I dealt with over a consistent period of time, that's where our experience was. And most of the time, it wasn't the first time. but it took some time. Some women squirt, some women, they do different things, but there's a psychology around this. Watch my video on the orgasm conspiracy. Watch my video on the disrespectful dick, the mind of a degrader. There's different things that I like that are very kinky that a lot of women may not be open to up front, but I know how to integrate that into my overall approach to weed out the women who would just never be open to it, but to also deal with those women. And what this gives me the ability to do is to deal with women who fit within the archetype of what I like. I like black nerds. I like women who are a little bit more quaint. That's just my genuine preference. I don't like real loudmouth, braggadocious women. I don't like women who trying to show their ass online all the time. You know what I mean? I'm not really into party girls. I like natural women. That's what I like. That's what I prefer. But I had to shift my preferences to get there. There's a difference between settling and shifting your preferences. And integrating your fantasies is the difference between settling and shifting your preferences. Right? Because you want to make sure that, especially if you're in a monogamous relationship, that you have a certain level of preferring your partner. Preference is important, not only for you, but for them, because the person you're with wants to feel preferred. Sometimes you have to have that tough conversation and have those tough conversations about what your preferences are. And that doesn't mean that those preferences can't shift. It just means that you're not in that place yet with that individual. And even if a person feels like, oh yeah, I like a guy who's like 6'2", with big muscles, man, if you take that woman to a place, if she's dealt with a guy who fit into that archetype, or she's just dealing with you, and you take her to some places sexually, emotionally, mentally, that man couldn't take her, or that she wouldn't be open to another man taking her, then before you know it, that same woman who may think that on paper will begin to, even if she leaves you, she'll start dealing with guys who are within the same vein and archetype that you're in. Like, a lot of dudes think that women like hood niggas, or like street dudes, right? Or like millionaires and billionaires, whatever it is. One, a lot of women can't get that. Keep it a buck with you. But at the same time, most of them can't keep that. And then after that, what you also have to understand is that you may not be that. But within this understanding, what you can find out is, if you take a woman to a new place emotionally, mentally, and sexually that she's never been before, you open her up to a whole new world, you invite her into your world, then you can shift the woman's imprint and change her preferences to be the archetype that you are. So there's women I dealt with who used to deal with street dudes. After they dealt with me, they started dealing with blurs. Yes, they appreciate me, whatever I like as far as sexually, like head. If I want a woman who's doing certain things, I can teach it to her. See, when you integrate your fantasies, you put yourself in a very advantageous position, right? Because what it is that's attracted to me is what I'm attracted to, right? Now, understand that there may be certain things that you may not have the confidence to get. When you have to have the confidence, but you also have to have a certain baseline level of attractiveness yourself. Like I always say, I ain't a super nigga, but although I ain't a super nigga, I am a guy who is decently attractive. I'm not going to say that I'm not. I got a nice beard. Understand your archetypes. Understand that within the archetypes, sometimes a look that you have, there are several different archetypes that can be attractive to a woman. A woman might like a teddy bear, a tall, lanky guy. She might like a shorter, stocky dude. She might like a dude who got waves, dude with dreads, dude who's bald-headed with a beard. Understand what archetype that you fit the most closely to. Max out your archetype for whatever type of person you are, whatever your body build is, your hair follicles is set up, and max that out to the best of your abilities, right? And then add a sprinkle of something else that makes it a little bit different. So for me, I wear kufis, I got earrings, I got a chain on, I wear dashikis, different shit like that. I have, certain things that are kind of consistent with how I dress. Sometimes I dress up casual, but a lot of the times I'm wearing like Adidas tracksuits, looking like a drug dealer from the 80s. There's different things that I like to do that kind of just make me stand out, but not in a very outlandish type of way. And for me, those are things that help me with attracting women. Women make comments about these things all the time. Another thing is this: if you have something like a bald head, some people talk about it, but you have to know how to flip it. Like a woman, I got a bald head. A woman might say something about my bald head. I'm like, it's all fun and games until you gripping on that bald head while you're getting your pussy ate. Like, that's something that's different. You know what I mean? Having something sexual outside the box, having a kink or a fetish that can open a woman up to a new experience that she maybe never had before. That's what foot fetish does for me. That's what BDSM often does for me. That's what dominance does for me. You know what I mean? There's different things that come with it. Being a little bit nastier than the rest of the competition. That helps. Having different fields of study, right? So I'm into a lot of things. I'm into spirituality and theology. I've read theology books. I'm heavily into philosophy, like Jungian psychology and shadow work, attachment theory. Sometimes I like to get into some extra pseudo shit. I like pseudo shit. I like a little bit of pseudo judo. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like some Enneagram. I like some MBTI typology. I get into a little bit of astrology, not too much, but I am a Scorpio sun, Leo moon, Scorpio rising, Enneagram, 5-wing-4, MBTI, INTJ. There's different things that I'm into, and when you're overall a certain person, that helps, but it's still important that you hit on a certain baseline level of sexual attractiveness and desire, right? Kay Zagan dropped a video recently about a woman has to view you as a lover first. That's how you get the best experience out of them. And it's the truth. You want to be the full package, but just because you're the full package, it doesn't mean you have to present yourself as the full package. Because you never know what part of that package a person is choosing you for, or if they're overstimulated in the area that's going to be important to your ego, or important to how they must feel about you to treat you the way you want to be treated. Like if you're a dominant individual, a person who's masculine submissive is not going to be able to get with that level of dominance. If you're masculine dominant, somebody who's feminine dominant, they may not be able to get with your level of masculinity, right? Because it's too straightforward, it's too direct, it stretches too much. It may be too consistent. But you have to make yourself attractive for the outcome that you desire, and as well as making yourself attractive for the outcome that you desire, you have to know how to make sure that what is attracted to you, you're attracted to, and if not, you need to improve. You need to improve anyways, but that's something that's also important. You got to integrate your fantasies. A lot of people have this good girl, bad girl dichotomy, Madonna-Whore dichotomy, right? This Gentleman-Gigolo complex. And what it is that they're sexually attracted to versus what they feel is relationship material is just worlds in between. This is part of the reason why people have such an issue with the Russell Wilson Future situation. And I'm going to touch on that on a completely separate video. But that's a big part of it, right? If you know that what somebody's sexual preference is shown in their earlier years is completely different from the type of individual that they want to be in a relationship with and marry, and that the way that their energy is with them is completely different than what it was before, within their body language, the way they talk, the way they feel about an individual, it creates this feeling of uneasiness in most men when they see it. It's kind of like Jada and Will versus Jada and Tupac. You know what I mean? It's a lot of things that go on. It's not just about a man's ego. Oftentimes people gaslight men about their ego, saying that what we think and things that they consider insecurities are just wrong, when oftentimes it's a matter of no. There's a certain way that you get the best treatment out of a woman if she feels a particular way about you. And integrating your fantasies and learning how to shift her preferences and replace her imprint is important to understanding that dichotomy. Now, not everybody's going to be worth that. And you want to make sure that you get as close to peaking out your archetype as possible, right? That way you give yourself a leg up over the competition. But at the end of the day, I think one of the most powerful things that you can do is integrate your fantasies. It's Coach Brody. I'm out.